The twin suns of Kepler 442c cast long shadows across the jagged terrain as Rhea Kethvar crouched low, her scaled fingers brushing against the disturbed soil. Her amber eyes narrowed as she inhaled deeply, catching the faint scent of her quarry, unmistakably human, with notes of adrenaline and determination. The bounty hunter's silver-blue scales rippled slightly as she processed the information, her highly evolved senses mapping out the path her prey had taken. "Interesting choice, Brennan," she murmured to herself, her voice a melodic rasp that barely disturbed the air around her. The human had chosen difficult terrain, a smart move for most hunters, but merely an inconvenience for someone of Rhea's caliber. The most sought-after huntress in 3 systems didn't earn her reputation by being deterred by knife-edge ridges and thermal vents. Rhea adjusted the plasma rifle, strapped across her back, and checked her wrist scanner once more. The bounty on Cody Brennan was substantial, 5 million credits, enough to purchase a small moon in some systems. The charges were vague: treason, theft of military secrets, and sabotage. It mattered little to Rhea. A contract was a contract, and her perfect record spoke for itself. She moved with liquid grace through the wilderness, her lightweight exo-armor barely making a sound as she traversed the rocky outcroppings. The frontier world of Kepler 442c was sparsely populated, mostly by miners and outcasts seeking to escape the reach of the Galactic Council. A perfect hiding place for someone like Brennan, or it would have been, if he hadn't chosen a hunter of Rhea's caliber as his pursuer. As the primary sun began to set, Rhea detected something unusual. A thin plume of smoke rose from a valley 2 kilometers ahead. Her sensory ridge along her spine stiffened in surprise. No fugitive with Brennan's military background would make such an elementary mistake. A trap, she concluded, but found herself intrigued rather than deterred. In 15 standard years of hunting, few prey had dared to challenge her directly. Most ran, hiding in the darkest corners of the galaxy until she inevitably found them. This human was different. Rhea approached with practiced caution, using natural cover to mask her approach. As she drew closer, she could see a small campfire burning in a clearing, and beside it, a figure sat casually on a fallen log. The human male appeared relaxed, warming his hands by the flames as if he hadn't a care in the universe. "I know you're there. Huntress Kethvar," Brennan called out without turning around. "You might as well join me. The nights get cold on this rock." Rhea remained silent, scanning the perimeter for hidden weapons or accomplices. Finding none that her advanced senses could detect, she decided to engage. The direct approach sometimes yielded information that stalking could not. She emerged from the shadows, plasma rifle held loosely but ready. "Cody Brennan," she stated, rather than asked, her translator converting her native Kelvic clicks and hisses into smooth standard. Most prey don't invite their predators to dinner. The human turned, and Rhea got her first clear look at her quarry. Brennan was tall for his species, with sharp features weathered by exposure and stress. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and his eyes, an unusual shade that reminded Rhea of the deep oceans on her homeworld, held a keen intelligence that immediately put her on alert. This was not a man who had survived by luck alone. "I'm not most prey," he replied with a slight smile that didn't reach those ocean eyes. "And you're not most hunters. I figured we should meet properly before this game gets any more interesting." "This is no game," Rhea said, keeping her distance. "There's a contract on your head across 4 systems. My job is to bring you in, alive if possible, dead if necessary." Brennan nodded, unsurprised. "And who issued this contract? General Hadron Cross?" "I'm guessing." Rhea didn't confirm or deny, though Brennan was correct. Client confidentiality was sacred in her profession. "Tell me," Brennan continued, prodding a log in the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing into the night sky. Did the contract mention why I'm wanted? The real reason, not the trumped-up charges they're no doubt broadcasting. Not my concern, Rhea replied flatly. The credits transfer to my account when I complete the job. Your guilt or innocence is for the courts to decide. Brennan laughed, a short, bitter sound. Courts, right. He stood slowly, hands visible to show he meant no immediate threat. I'm proposing something different. Huntress, a challenge. Despite herself, Rhea felt her interest peak. Explain. 3 days, Brennan said. Give me 3 days to convince you not to take me in. If, after that time, you still believe I should face justice, I'll come willingly. No resistance. Rhea's sensory ridge flattened against her spine in skepticism. And why would I agree to such terms when I could simply take you now? Because you're curious, Brennan replied simply. Because in all your hunts, you've never encountered prey that didn't run or fight. And because deep down, you want to know if there's more to this contract than credits. Rhea remained impassive, but the human had struck uncomfortably close to truth. She had noticed inconsistencies in the briefing, details that didn't align with standard military protocol for handling traitors. Besides, Brennan added with a sudden, genuine grin that transformed his face, I've disabled your ship's communication array. You can't call for extraction or backup until the dampening field I've established is deactivated, which only I can do. Rhea's hand tightened on her weapon, her scales flushing a deeper blue with anger. You've made a grave miscalculation, human. Have I? Brennan didn't flinch. Kill me, and you'll be stranded here for at least a standard month until your emergency beacon reaches the nearest outpost. And you won't get paid without proof of capture or elimination. They stared at each other across the flickering firelight. Predator and prey, engaged in a different kind of hunt now, one of wits and wills. Finally, Rhea spoke. 2 days, she countered, and you'll deactivate the dampening field immediately after, regardless of the outcome. Brennan nodded, extending his hand in what Rhea recognized as a human gesture of agreement. Deal. She ignored the offered hand. This begins now. You should run. To her surprise, Brennan shook his head. No need. First lesson starts in the morning. Get some rest, Huntress. You'll need it. With that, he tossed his stick into the fire and stretched out on a bedroll beside the flames, turning his back to her in a display of either foolishness or supreme confidence. Rhea chose a position several meters away, her back against a boulder, where she could observe both Brennan and the surrounding wilderness. She didn't need as much sleep as humans, and she certainly wasn't going to drop her guard around this peculiar prey. As the night deepened, and Kepler's 3 moons rose one after another, casting the landscape in shifting shadows, Rhea found herself studying the sleeping human with growing curiosity. In all her years of hunting, she had never encountered someone like Cody Brennan. The question that kept circling in her mind wasn't how she would capture him, but why someone would go to such lengths to ensnare her interest rather than simply trying to escape. Morning arrived with a blood-red sunrise that painted the rugged landscape in crimson hues. Rhea, who had maintained her vigilant watch through the night, observed as Brennan stirred and rose from his bedroll with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to field conditions. Sleep well, he asked, stretching his lean frame. I don't require much sleep, Rhea responded, her amber eyes tracking his movements. Your first lesson begins now, I presume? Brennan nodded, packing his minimal gear with quick, practiced motions. Follow me if you want answers. He set off at a brisk pace, heading northeast toward a dense forest that climbed up the side of a sheer mountain face. Rhea followed at a slight distance, her senses alert for any sign of ambush or deception. The human moved with surprising agility for his species, navigating the difficult terrain with the confidence of someone who had thoroughly scouted it. As they entered the forest, the thick canopy of alien vegetation blocked much of the sunlight, casting the forest floor in dappled shadows. Strange. Luminescent fungi clung to the massive trunks, providing just enough illumination to navigate by. The air grew heavy with moisture, and the rich scent of decay and renewal. The Kelvin Forest, Brennan explained without slowing his pace. One of the oldest ecosystems on this planet. The trees communicate through a mycelial network beneath our feet, almost like a planetary nervous system. I'm familiar with the concept, Rhea replied. My homeworld has similar networks. What does this have to do with your supposed innocence? Brennan glanced back at her, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Patience, Huntress. We're not there yet. The forest grew denser as they progressed, the paths narrowing until they were navigating through tight corridors of vegetation. Brennan moved with purpose, occasionally consulting a small device on his wrist that Rhea recognized as a sophisticated mapping tool, military grade if she wasn't mistaken. After nearly 2 hours of steady hiking, they emerged into a small clearing dominated by a massive tree that dwarfed all others around it. Its trunk was easily 20 meters in diameter, with roots that erupted from the ground like ancient serpents before plunging back into the soil. The heart of the forest, Brennan announced, approaching the giant tree with something akin to reverence. Some of the colonists call it the mother tree. Rhea remained silent, waiting for the human to make his point. Brennan placed his hand against the rough bark of the tree, closing his eyes briefly. Do you know what Project Mindbridge was, Huntress? He asked suddenly, his voice taking on a harder edge. The name stirred something in Rhea's memory. A classified research initiative mentioned briefly in the briefing dossier, but with no details provided. Military research, she replied cautiously. Beyond that, the information was restricted. Yes, military research, Brennan confirmed, turning to face her. His expression had darkened. Led by General Cross and a team of the brightest minds in neuroscience and xenobiology. I was among them. He gestured to the massive tree behind him. We discovered that certain alien life forms possess neural networks similar to advanced computing systems, natural biological quantum computers. Essentially, the mother tree is one such organism. Rhea's sensory ridge stiffened with interest, despite her professional detachment. Go on. Project Mindbridge was officially about developing new communication technologies, ways to interface human consciousness with alien networks for faster-than-light communication. At least, that's what we were told. Brennan's voice had grown bitter. What Cross actually wanted was a weapon, a way to hijack and control these networks, to turn them into surveillance systems and, eventually, delivery systems for mind control technology. Rhea's scales rippled with skepticism. Mind control? That sounds like the desperate excuse of a man facing serious charges. I thought you might say that, Brennan nodded. That's why we're here. The mother tree is connected to every living thing in this forest, including, temporarily, us, through the spores we've been breathing since we entered. Rhea instinctively reached for her respirator, but Brennan held up a hand. Don't worry. It's harmless to us. But it does create a mild psychic link, enough for surface thoughts and emotions to be read by someone who knows how to interpret the signals. He pointed to a small device nestled among the roots of the giant tree. That's a receiver I modified from our original research. It's been recording our psychic signatures since we entered the clearing. He approached the device and activated a holographic display. Complex patterns of light appeared in the air between them, swirling, shifting mandalas of color and shape. This is your pattern. Brennan indicated a predominantly blue-silver configuration that pulsed with steady rhythm. And this, he pointed to a more chaotic pattern of greens and golds, is mine. The patterns reveal emotional states, surface thoughts, and most importantly, truth or deception. Rhea studied the display with growing unease. If the human was correct, Such technology would indeed be coveted by military powers throughout the galaxy. "Ask me anything about the charges against me," Brennan challenged. "The patterns will show whether I'm lying." Rhea considered for a moment, then decided to engage with the demonstration. "Did you steal classified military information?" "Yes," Brennan answered without hesitation, and his pattern remained stable. "I took evidence of Project Mindbridge's true purpose after I discovered what Cross intended to do with our research." "And what was that?" Brennan's pattern flared with dark reds. Anger, Rhea presumed. "To deploy the technology against civilian populations on worlds that resisted Council authority, beginning with the colony on Europa, where my colleague and mentor, Dr. Elena Vasquez, had family." "Did you sabotage military installations, as charged?" "I disabled 3 research facilities connected to the project," Brennan admitted, his pattern steady. "No personnel were harmed, I made certain of that. But I couldn't allow the research to continue." Rhea circled the holographic display, studying the patterns with her trained eye for detail. If this technology worked as Brennan claimed, it represented both incredible opportunity and terrible danger. "Why not take your concerns through proper channels? Report to oversight committees?" Brennan's pattern churned with dark blues. Sorrow, perhaps. Dr. Vasquez did exactly that. 3 days later, she was found dead in her quarters. Official cause: suicide. But Elena would never. He broke off, visibly collecting himself. "She sent me a message just hours before her death. She discovered that Cross had already begun deploying prototype devices on unsuspecting populations." He met Rhea's gaze directly. "I couldn't prove Cross had Elena killed, but I could make sure her death wasn't meaningless." Rhea was silent for a long moment, processing this information. The technology was convincing, but not foolproof, and Brennan himself had set it up. It could all be an elaborate deception. "A compelling story," she finally said. "But this device could be programmed to show whatever patterns you wish me to see." Brennan smiled thinly. "I expected that response. That's why this is only the first lesson." He deactivated the holographic display and began walking toward the far side of the clearing. "Come on. We have a long way to go before sunset." They traveled through the remainder of the forest in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they emerged from the tree line, Rhea saw their path led to a narrow stone bridge spanning a deep chasm. Far below, a river rushed over jagged rocks, the water a peculiar purple hue that suggested high mineral content. "Careful," Brennan warned as they approached the bridge. "It's older than it looks, and not entirely stable." The bridge was constructed of fitted stone blocks without mortar, an ancient technique that spoke of a civilization long vanished from this world. It arched gracefully across the 100-meter span, with no railings or safety features of any kind. Brennan stepped onto the bridge first, testing each stone before committing his weight. The colonists believed this was built by the original inhabitants of Kepler 442c, a species that went extinct thousands of years ago. No one knows why they disappeared. Rhea followed cautiously, her lighter frame and perfect balance making the crossing less treacherous for her than for her human companion. "Civilizations rise and fall," she commented. "It is the way of the universe." "Perhaps," Brennan replied over his shoulder. "But I've always wondered if they were helped along into extinction. Their neural structures were reportedly similar to the forest network we just left." They had reached approximately the midpoint of the bridge, when Rhea's acute hearing detected a subtle change in the sound of the rushing water below, a deeper resonance that suggested shifting currents or disturbed sediment. "Stop!" she commanded sharply. "Something's wrong!" Brennan froze in place, then slowly turned to face her. "You hear it too? The change in the river's song?" Before Rhea could respond, a low rumble vibrated through the ancient stones beneath their feet. Fine particles of dust rose from between the blocks as the bridge began to tremble. "It's collapsing," Rhea stated, already calculating their chances of reaching either side before the structure failed completely. "Not collapsing," Brennan corrected, a strange calmness in his voice despite their perilous position. "Changing." As if in response to his words, the stones of the bridge began to shift and rearrange themselves. What had been a simple arched span was transforming before their eyes, sections rising and falling in a complex pattern that seemed almost choreographed. "What is this?" Rhea demanded, her scales flushing a deeper blue as she braced herself against the moving stones. "The second lesson," Brennan replied, maintaining his balance with practiced skill as the bridge continued its impossible reconfiguration. "About trust and cooperation." The bridge had now reshaped itself into something resembling a labyrinth, a winding path of stone platforms suspended above the chasm, with gaps of varying widths between them. Some sections continued to move slowly, up and down, creating a three-dimensional puzzle. "The bridge responds to thought patterns," Brennan explained. "Another application of the technology I told you about. This was an early test site for Project Mindbridge, designed to study how collective consciousness could manipulate physical structures." Rhea's amber eyes narrowed in suspicion. "You've led me into a trap." "Not a trap." Brennan shook his head. "A demonstration. The bridge can only be navigated by two minds working in concert, thinking in harmony. If we try to cross independently, focusing on our own paths—" He gestured to the nearest gap, which widened suddenly, as if to emphasize his point. "We'll fall." Rhea assessed their situation with cold precision. The nearest shoreline was now 40 meters away, with at least a dozen gaps and moving platforms between them and safety. Below, the purple river roared over rocks that would shatter even her durable skeleton on impact. "And if I simply eliminate you and find my own way across?" she asked, her hand drifting toward her plasma rifle. "Then you'll almost certainly die," Brennan answered bluntly. "The bridge requires two living minds with compatible neural patterns to navigate. Kill me, and the whole structure will likely collapse within minutes." Rhea studied the human's face, searching for signs of deception, finding none. She made her decision. "What do we do?" "We synchronize," Brennan said, extending his hand toward her. "Physical contact helps establish the initial connection. Then we need to coordinate our movements and intentions, literally thinking as one." Rhea hesitated, then reluctantly grasped the human's offered hand. His skin was warm against her scales, softer than she had expected. The moment their hands connected, she felt a subtle shift in her awareness, a faint echo of another consciousness brushing against the edges of her own. "Good," Brennan murmured. "Now, focus on the next platform. Visualize us moving toward it together." Rhea directed her thoughts as instructed, picturing the stone platform 3 meters ahead steadying itself, becoming a secure landing point. To her surprise, the platform immediately stabilized, its subtle oscillations ceasing. "It works," she acknowledged, unable to completely mask her amazement. "One step at a time," Brennan nodded. "Stay connected to my thoughts." They began their careful traversal of the transformed bridge, moving in perfect synchronization. Each step required mutual agreement and shared intention, a dance of minds as much as bodies. When Brennan briefly lost focus near the middle, causing a platform to tilt dangerously, Rhea instinctively strengthened their mental connection, compensating for his momentary lapse. The experience was unlike anything in Rhea's extensive training. As a solitary hunter, she had always relied solely on her own skills and judgment. This enforced collaboration, this mental entanglement with her prey, went against everything she had practiced throughout her career. Yet, there was something strangely compelling about it. The efficiency of two minds working as one, the way they could anticipate and respond to challenges before they fully manifested. By the time they reached the far side of the chasm, Rhea found herself reluctant to break the connection. Brennan gently disengaged his hand from hers as they stepped onto solid ground. The mental link faded, leaving Rhea with an unexpected sense of loss. That, Brennan said quietly, is what Cross wanted to weaponize. Not just the ability to read minds, but to link them, to force synchronization and compliance on an unwilling population. Rhea took a moment to regain her usual mental equilibrium. The technology is impressive, she admitted. But I still don't understand why you've shown me this. You're only proving that the weapon Cross seeks is real and powerful. Because you needed to experience it to understand what's at stake, Brennan replied. And because I needed to know if your mind was compatible with mine. Rhea's sensory ridge stiffened. Compatible? For what purpose? For what comes next, Brennan said cryptically. Come on, we need to reach the basin before nightfall. The remainder of their journey took them across a wind-swept plateau, where strange, crystalline formations caught the light of the setting suns and scattered it in prismatic displays across the rocky ground. By the time they descended into a wide, circular basin, surrounded by steep cliffs, the primary sun had disappeared below the horizon, leaving only its larger companion to cast long shadows across the landscape. The basin itself was a marvel of engineering, a perfectly circular depression, half a kilometer in diameter. Its floor, covered in intricate patterns of inlaid stones that formed spiraling designs around a central platform. The patterns reminded Rhea of the neural maps she had seen in the holographic display earlier, though on a vastly larger scale. Another test site? She asked, as they made their way toward the center. The primary research facility, actually, Brennan confirmed. Hidden in plain sight, disguised as an archaeological excavation of indigenous ruins. Cross had the entire basin engineered to amplify and focus the neural energies they were experimenting with. As they reached the central platform, Brennan removed his pack and extracted what appeared to be a standard military communication device. He made several adjustments to its settings, then placed it on the ground between them. The final lesson, he said, his expression grave. The full truth about Project Mindbridge, and why you were sent to capture me. He activated the device, and a holographic projection appeared above it, a three-dimensional representation of official military documents, personnel files, and research data. Brennan manipulated the display with practiced gestures, highlighting specific sections for Rhea's attention. Project Mindbridge began 5 years ago as a genuine research initiative, he explained. The original goal was to develop new methods of interstellar communication, instantaneous connections across vast distances through quantum entanglement of compatible neural networks. He brought forward an image of a distinguished human female with silver-streaked dark hair and intelligent eyes. Dr. Elena Vasquez led the research team. I was her primary assistant and field technician. The image shifted to show a stern-faced military officer with close-cropped gray hair and cold eyes. General Hadron Cross provided funding and oversight. At first, his interests seemed purely strategic. Faster communication would give the military significant advantages. Brennan's voice hardened. 2 years into the project, we achieved our first breakthrough, successful transmission of coherent thoughts between two subjects, 50 light-years apart. That's when Cross began to change the parameters of our research. He displayed a new set of documents, orders redirecting the project toward applications in interrogation, surveillance, and what was euphemistically termed behavioral modification. Elena objected. Brennan continued. She threatened to report Cross to the Science Ethics Council. That's when things got ugly. The holographic display showed security footage of armed personnel entering a research facility, forcibly removing equipment and data storage devices. Cross classified everything under military security protocols and moved the core research team to a black site facility on Europa. Rhea studied the documents carefully, noting official seals and authentication markers that would be difficult to falsify. What happened on Europa? Brennan's expression darkened. Cross began human testing, not on volunteers, but on political prisoners and civilians from non-aligned worlds. The results were... He paused, visibly struggling with the memory. Catastrophic. Early versions of the technology caused massive neural damage. Subjects experienced everything from psychosis to complete brain death. He brought up clinical images that made even Ria's hardened sensibilities recoil. Humans with vacant eyes, their faces contorted in silent agony. Elena couldn't stand by and watch. She compiled evidence, encrypted it, and sent copies to trusted colleagues and oversight committees. Brennan's voice caught. 3 days later, she was dead. The official report called it suicide, but Elena had just told me she was planning to flee to neutral space with her evidence. Ria absorbed this information in silence, her hunter's instincts assessing its validity. The documentation appeared genuine, the timeline consistent, but one crucial question remained. Why would Cross send me specifically? She asked. There are many hunters who would have taken this contract. Brennan met her gaze directly. Because of what you are, Ria. Your Kelvic neural structure is uniquely compatible with the MindBridge technology. Cross doesn't just want me captured. He wants you as his next test subject. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Ria's scales flushed a deep indigo with shock and anger. Explain. Your species evolved from amphibious predators with distributed neural networks, similar to the mycological networks in the Kelvin forest, but contained within a single organism. Your brains process information differently than most sentient species. Brennan brought up comparative neural scans. One human, one Kelvic. Your natural conduits for the kind of consciousness transmission MindBridge was designed to facilitate. He highlighted a section of classified research. Cross's team hit a wall with human test subjects. Their neural architecture couldn't handle the strain of directed consciousness manipulation. But your species can. You're the missing piece in his weapon. Ria's mind raced, reassessing everything she knew about this contract. The unusually high payment. The insistence that she handle the mission personally, rather than with her usual team. The restricted information about the target. You have no proof that I was intended as a test subject, she said finally, though doubt had begun to creep into her certainty. You're right, Brennan acknowledged. That's why we're here. He gestured to the basin around them. This facility is still active, though dormant. The systems are monitoring us right now, recording our neural patterns as we speak, and they're transmitting that data back to Cross's primary research station. He turned back to the communication device and entered a complex sequence of commands. I'm going to show you something that should convince you. I'm accessing the facility's secure communications. Messages intended for the retrieval team that was supposed to meet you after my capture. The holographic display shifted to show an encrypted military communique. As Brennan decrypted it line by line, Ria felt her professional detachment giving way to cold fury. The message detailed extraction protocols for both subjects, herself and Brennan. It specified transport to a classified facility and immediate neural interface preparation for the Kelvic specimen. Most damning of all, it contained contingency plans in case she became non-compliant upon learning operational parameters. This could be fabricated, Ria said, though her conviction was waning. You've had time to prepare elaborate deceptions. Then perhaps this will convince you, Brennan replied. He entered another command sequence, and the holographic display changed to show a live video feed. The image showed a military staging area where armed personnel were boarding transport vessels. The timestamp indicated the feed was current. Cross isn't taking any chances, Brennan explained. The moment we entered this basin and triggered the monitoring systems, he dispatched a retrieval team. They'll be here by morning, a full strike force, not the standard extraction team mentioned in your contract. Ria studied the video feed, recognizing military protocols and equipment configurations that matched official council forces. This, at least, appeared genuine. You've led me into a trap after all, she observed, her hand moving to her weapon. Not a trap, Brennan corrected. A choice. He shut down the holographic display and faced her directly. In approximately 10 hours, Cross's forces will arrive. They expect to find you with me in custody, unaware of their true intentions. Once they have us both, the Project Mindbridge experiments will resume with you as the primary subject. He took a step closer, his expression intense. Or we can disappear, together. I've prepared an escape route, a network of natural caves beneath this basin that lead to an abandoned mining facility with a functional transport ship. You're asking me to betray my contract, Rhea stated. To throw away 15 years of perfect service and the reputation I've built. I'm asking you to save yourself, Brennan countered. And perhaps billions of others who would suffer if Cross weaponizes this technology. You've seen what it can do. The bridge, the neural mapping. Imagine that power turned toward control rather than connection. Rhea stood motionless, her hunter's training warring with the evidence before her. She had never abandoned a contract, never failed to deliver her quarry. Her reputation was her most valuable asset in a profession where trust was rare and failure often fatal. Yet the pieces aligned too perfectly to dismiss. The inconsistencies in her briefing, the unusual parameters of the contract, the technology she had witnessed firsthand throughout this strange pursuit. If I help you, she said slowly, what happens afterward? We simply disappear? We expose Cross, Brennan replied without hesitation. Elena compiled enough evidence to bring down his entire operation. I've kept it secure, waiting for the right moment and the right allies. His eyes held hers. With your testimony about what you've seen here, the council would have to act. The decision crystallized in Rhea's mind with sudden clarity. She had built her reputation on delivering exactly what her contract specified. No more, no less. The contract had been for Cody Brennan, traitor and thief. But the man before her was neither. He was a whistleblower, fighting to expose genuine corruption and abuse. The real traitor was the one who had issued the contract. Show me these caves, she said finally. We have preparations to make before morning. Relief washed over Brennan's features, quickly replaced by focused determination. This way, he said, leading her toward a narrow fissure in the rock wall at the basin's edge that Rhea had initially dismissed as a natural formation. As they slipped into the darkness of the underground passage, Rhea felt an unfamiliar sensation, something between uncertainty and anticipation. For the first time in her hunting career, she had no clear plan beyond the immediate future. The sensation was not entirely unpleasant. The cave system beneath the basin proved to be extensive and complex, a natural labyrinth of tunnels, chambers, and underground waterways that would have been impossible to navigate without Brennan's guidance. He moved through the darkness with confidence, consulting his mapping device at key junctions. I spent weeks mapping these tunnels, he explained, as they descended deeper into the planet's crust. There are sections even the military surveys missed, natural formations that developed after their initial geological surveys. The air grew warmer as they progressed, and Rhea detected increasing levels of sulfur and other volcanic gases. Her exo-armor automatically adjusted its filtration systems, but she noted that Brennan had donned a compact breather mask. We're approaching a geothermal zone, he confirmed, noticing her observation. The heat and gases provide excellent cover from scanning technology, natural interference that masks life signs and technological signatures. After nearly an hour of steady progress through increasingly difficult terrain, they emerged into a vast underground cavern. The space was illuminated by the eerie blue glow of bioluminescent fungi, similar to those in the forest above, revealing a scene that momentarily stopped Rhea in her tracks. The cavern had been converted into a makeshift base of operations. One section contained communications equipment and data terminals. Another held supplies, food, water, medical necessities, and ammunition. A small power generator hummed quietly in the corner, providing energy for the installation. Most impressive was the modified scout ship positioned on a natural stone platform at the cavern's center. Sleek, military-grade, with custom modifications that Rhea's experienced eye immediately identified as stealth enhancements. "You've been preparing for this confrontation for some time," she observed, reassessing Brennan yet again. This level of preparation spoke of resources and connections beyond what a simple scientist should possess. "Since Elena's death," Brennan confirmed, moving toward the communications array. "I knew eventually Cross would send someone after me. I just didn't expect it to be you." There was something in his tone that caught Rhea's attention, a personal element that hadn't been present before. "You knew of me before this contract?" Brennan's hands paused over the console. "Your reputation precedes you. Huntress Kethvar, the most effective tracker in 3 systems. Perfect completion record. Impeccable professional ethics." He glanced back at her. "You were actually part of a case study in our research, an example of unique neural adaptation and evolutionary advantage." Rhea wasn't sure whether to be flattered or disturbed by this revelation. "I was studied without my knowledge. Only your public record and available biometric data," Brennan assured her. "Standard research protocols for xenobiology. Nothing invasive." He returned his attention to the console, initiating a complex sequence of commands. "But yes, I knew who you were. When I learned you had taken the contract, I adjusted my plans." "The trap at the campfire," Rhea surmised. "You wanted to be found. By me specifically." "I needed someone who would listen to evidence before acting," Brennan confirmed. "Someone with the intelligence and integrity to recognize the truth when presented with it. Your record suggested you might be that person." A high-pitched tone from the console interrupted their conversation. Brennan quickly checked the readout, his expression tightening. "They've landed ahead of schedule," he announced. "A forward reconnaissance team. At least 6 operatives. Heavy weapons configuration." Rhea moved to the cavern entrance, her hunter's senses extending to their limits. "How did they locate us so quickly?" "They haven't. Not precisely," Brennan replied, shutting down the communication system and moving to a weapons locker. "They're following standard search protocols, starting from the basin and working outward. We still have time, but not much." He extracted 2 pulse rifles from the locker, offering one to Rhea. She accepted it automatically, checking its charge and configuration with practiced efficiency. "The plan?" she asked. "We need to reach the ship and launch before their main force arrives," Brennan explained, gathering additional equipment. "But first, we need to transmit Elena's evidence to multiple secure locations. Insurance, in case we don't make it out." He handed Rhea a small data crystal. "This contains everything: research logs, experiment results, victim identities, Cross's direct orders. If anything happens to me, promise you'll get this to the Council Science Ethics Committee." Rhea secured the crystal in a protected compartment of her exo-armor. "We will both deliver it," she stated with finality. "Now, let us deal with this reconnaissance team." Brennan nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. "They'll be expecting a scientist and a bounty hunter. Let's show them what a scientist and a hunter can do together." They moved through the tunnels with coordinated precision, Rhea taking point with her superior senses, while Brennan monitored their pursuers' positions on his tactical display. The lessons of the stone bridge had not been forgotten. They operated now as a unit, complementing each other's strengths. The first encounter came at a narrow passage, where the tunnel briefly widened into a small chamber. 2 operatives in stealth armor were methodically scanning the walls for hidden passages, their attention focused on their instruments rather than their surroundings. Rhea signaled to Brennan, indicating positions and suggesting a simultaneous takedown. He nodded, understanding, moving silently into position while she circled to the opposite approach. The operatives never saw what hit them. Rhea's plasma weapon discharged with a muted hum, delivering a precisely calibrated stun charge to her target's neural cluster. Simultaneously, Brennan deployed a non-lethal sonic disruptor that dropped his opponent instantly. Non-lethal? Rhea questioned, as they secured the unconscious operatives. "They're soldiers following orders," Brennan replied, efficiently binding the fallen operatives and disabling their communication devices. Cross is the enemy, not them. Rhea found herself respecting this distinction, though her own approach to obstacles had typically been more pragmatic. They continued through the tunnels, encountering and neutralizing two more pairs of operatives with similar efficiency. "The main force will know something's wrong when their recon team stops reporting," Rhea noted as they approached the final stretch of tunnels, leading to their escape route. "Already taken care of," Brennan assured her. "I've looped their communication channels with pre-recorded status updates. It won't fool them forever, but it should buy us the time we need." They emerged from the tunnel network into another large cavern. This one dominated by abandoned mining equipment and the partially collapsed remains of a processing facility. The scout ship waited on a makeshift landing pad, its sleek contours incongruous among the rusted industrial machinery. "We need 5 minutes to complete the transmission and prepare for launch," Brennan explained as they approached the ship. "The evidence needs to go to multiple secure servers simultaneously to prevent interception." He began the pre-launch sequence while Rhea established a defensive perimeter, her senses alert for any sign of pursuit. The transmission process began, progress indicators on the console showing multiple data streams activating. 60% complete, Brennan reported after 2 tense minutes. "Once this finishes, we'll—" A thunderous explosion interrupted him, shaking the entire cavern and sending cascades of rock dust raining from the ceiling. Alarms blared from the ship's sensors. "They've found the main entrance," Rhea concluded, already moving toward the source of the disturbance. "How much longer?" 3 minutes for full transmission, Brennan replied, fingers flying over the controls. "We can't launch until it's complete. The data is routing through the ship's communication array." "Then I will buy you 3 minutes, Rhea stated, checking her weapons and moving toward the tunnel entrance. "Rhea, wait," Brennan called, catching her arm. "There are too many of them to fight directly." She looked pointedly at his hand on her scaled forearm, and he released her, though his concern remained evident. "I do not intend to engage them directly," she assured him. "I am a hunter, not merely a fighter. I will lead them away from your position." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "The southern tunnels. They circle back to the thermal vents." Rhea nodded. "Precisely. Prepare the ship. When the transmission is complete, signal me on this frequency." She indicated her communication device. "I will return by the maintenance shaft." Without waiting for his response, she melted into the shadows of the cavern, moving with the silent efficiency that had made her the most feared hunter in the sector. Her plan was simple, but effective. Create a diversion, lead the pursuit team away from Brennan and the ship, then circle back once the transmission was complete. She positioned herself near the main tunnel entrance, watching as the first wave of Cross's forces emerged. 8 operatives in full tactical gear, weapons raised and ready. Their commander signaled for them to spread out and secure the cavern. Rhea waited until they had committed to their search pattern, then deliberately dislodged a small cascade of stones from her elevated position. As expected, all attention immediately turned toward the noise. "Movement. Southeast quadrant," one operative reported. "Single target. Moving fast." Rhea was already in motion, visible just long enough to be identified before disappearing into a side tunnel. She heard the commander's orders. "Primary target spotted. Team Alpha, pursue and contain," and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as footsteps pounded after her. The southern tunnels were a treacherous maze of narrow passages and sudden drops, perfect terrain for her hunting skills. She navigated the darkness with ease, occasionally allowing her pursuers a glimpse to ensure they maintained the chase, but always staying just beyond their reach. As she had anticipated, the soldiers were unfamiliar with the tunnel system and quickly became disoriented. She led them deeper into the network, toward the thermal vents, where rising heat and toxic gases would force them to slow their pursuit and don protective gear. Her communication device vibrated against her wrist. Brennan signaled that the transmission was complete. Time to circle back to the ship. She took a final turn that would lead her pursuers to a particularly noxious gas pocket, then doubled back through a narrow fissure that the humans in their bulky tactical gear couldn't hope to navigate. The route back to the ship was longer than her outbound path, but unobstructed. She moved at top speed, her powerful legs carrying her through the tunnels with preternatural agility. As she approached the mining cavern, however, her senses detected something wrong. New sense. The subtle vibration of additional personnel moving into position. A second team had entered from another access point. Rhea slowed her approach, evaluating the situation. From her vantage point in a service shaft overlooking the main cavern, she could see 4 operatives advancing on the ship with tactical precision. Brennan was nowhere in sight, presumably already aboard and preparing for launch. She had seconds to make a decision. The operatives were nearly at the ship, and once they breached the hull, Brennan would be trapped. The evidence might never reach its destination. Rhea didn't hesitate. She launched herself from the service shaft, her plasma rifle discharging 3 precisely aimed stun bolts before she hit the ground. 3 operatives dropped instantly. The 4th managed to turn and fire a wild shot in her direction before her final bolt found its mark. The energy blast from the operative's weapon grazed her left shoulder, burning through her exo-armor and searing the scales beneath. Rhea hissed in pain, but didn't slow her sprint toward the ship. The boarding ramp lowered as she approached, revealing Brennan in the doorway, his own weapon raised to provide cover. "Status?" he demanded as she bounded up the ramp. "Pursuit team diverted. Second team neutralized." She gestured to the fallen operatives. "Non-lethally, as you preferred. But we have minutes at most before others arrive." The ship's engines were already humming with pre-launch energy as they sealed the hatch. Brennan moved to the pilot's seat, initiating the launch sequence with practiced efficiency, while Rhea took the co-pilot position. "Transmission completed successfully," he reported as the ship began to rise. "Elena's evidence has been delivered to the Science Ethics Committee, 3 independent news networks, and the diplomatic corps of 2 non-aligned worlds. It's already propagating through secure channels. Cross can't stop it now." The ship accelerated upward through a natural chimney in the cavern ceiling, a vertical shaft that Brennan had clearly prepared as their escape route. As they emerged into the open air, the ship's sensors immediately began tracking multiple incoming signatures. "Military interceptors," Rhea observed. 8 units, converging from orbital positions. "They won't catch us," Brennan assured her, his hands dancing across the controls. The ship surged forward, its modified engines delivering acceleration that pressed them both back into their seats. "This vessel has a few surprises that aren't in any military registry." He activated a sequence of commands, and the ship's external signature began to shift, changing its energy profile and sensor return to mimic a common mining vessel. Simultaneously, a series of countermeasures deployed behind them, creating multiple false signatures to confuse pursuit. "Impressive," Rhea acknowledged, as the tactical display showed the interceptors splitting their formation to chase the decoys. "Military-grade deception technology with custom modifications. You have interesting friends, Brennan. Former colleagues who share Elena's ethics," he replied, guiding the ship toward the upper atmosphere. "Not everyone in the military supports Cross's methods." As the blue-green curve of Kepler 442c fell away beneath them, replaced by the star-scattered blackness of space, Rhea found herself in an unfamiliar position. For the first time in 15 years, she had abandoned a contract. More than that, She had actively opposed it, aligning herself with her intended quarry against her employer. "Having second thoughts?" Brennan asked quietly, noting her silence. "Evaluating new circumstances," she corrected. "My professional standing is compromised. I am now, effectively, a fugitive. As are you. These are not optimal conditions." Brennan chuckled, the sound surprisingly warm in the confined space of the cockpit. "A master of understatement. Cross will have branded us both traitors by now. He'll use every resource at his disposal to find us." "Then we must ensure he does not," Rhea stated simply. "Where do we go from here?" Brennan engaged the ship's faster-than-light drive, and the stars outside elongated into streaks of light as they transitioned to hyperspace. "First, to a secure location where we can recover and plan our next moves. I have a safe house on the outer rim that not even Elena knew about." He glanced at her injured shoulder, which she had been methodically treating with medical supplies from the ship's emergency kit. "That needs proper attention. There's a full medical bay in the rear compartment." Rhea nodded acknowledgement but didn't immediately move to seek treatment. "The evidence we transmitted, will it be enough?" "To start an investigation, yes," Brennan replied. "To bring Cross down completely? That depends on politics as much as evidence. He has powerful allies and a decorated military career to shield him." "Then our work is not finished," Rhea concluded. "No," Brennan agreed. "But we've struck the first blow, and we're still alive to continue the fight." A comfortable silence fell between them as the ship carried them through hyperspace. Rhea found herself studying her unlikely ally, this human who had outmaneuvered her, challenged her assumptions, and ultimately led her to break the professional code she had followed her entire career. Yet, she felt no regret for her decision. The evidence had been compelling, the threat real. In choosing to help Brennan, she had remained true to a deeper principle, one that transcended contracts and credits. "You're staring," Brennan observed without looking away from the navigation controls. "I am evaluating," Rhea corrected. "You are not what I expected, Cody Brennan." "Likewise. Huntress Kethvar," he replied, a smile touching the corners of his mouth. "When I planned this encounter, I calculated a 70% probability that you would simply stun me at the campfire and collect your bounty." "That would have been the logical course of action," she agreed. "But not the right one," he added, finally turning to meet her gaze. Something unspoken passed between them in that moment, a recognition of shared purpose that transcended their different species, backgrounds, and initial adversarial relationship. "Rest," Brennan suggested gently. "We have 12 hours before we reach the safe house. Your injury needs time to heal, and we'll both need our strength for what comes next." Rhea nodded and rose from her seat, moving toward the medical bay. At the doorway, she paused. "Brennan." He looked up. "Yes?" "You chose well," she said simply. "When you selected your hunter." His smile deepened, reaching his eyes this time. "I know." 3 standard months later, a small, unmarked vessel descended through the atmosphere of an uncharted world in the Cygnus sector. The planet was a jewel of blue oceans and green continents, untouched by colonization or exploitation, one of the few remaining pristine worlds beyond the reach of the Galactic Council. In the cockpit, Rhea Kethvar and Cody Brennan watched the sunrise breaking over a coastline of white sand beaches and soaring cliffs. "It's perfect," Brennan said softly, his hand finding hers. The gesture had become familiar over their months together, a connection that had evolved from necessity to choice. Rhea's scales shimmered with iridescent blues and silvers in the morning light, a visual indication of contentment that she no longer attempted to suppress in his presence. Isolated, self-sustaining ecosystem. No strategic value to attract unwanted attention. Tactically sound. Brennan laughed. "And beautiful. You can say it, you know. Beauty is a tactical advantage, too. It gives us something worth fighting for." She conceded the point with a slight inclination of her head. It is aesthetically optimal. The past 3 months had transformed them both. The evidence they had transmitted had indeed triggered investigations into Project Mindbridge and General Cross's activities. Multiple whistleblowers had come forward, encouraged by their example. The Galactic Council, faced with incontrovertible evidence and public outrage, had shut down the project and issued warrants for Cross's arrest. But the general had disappeared before he could be apprehended, taking key research data and several loyal scientists with him. The threat had been contained, but not eliminated, a fact that had led Rhea and Brennan to make certain preparations for their future. Their ship contained a sophisticated warning system designed to alert them to any attempt to revive the Mindbridge technology anywhere in known space. They had established secure communication channels with allies in the Science Ethics Committee and the Reformed Military Oversight Board. They remained vigilant, ready to emerge from their self-imposed exile if the need arose. But for now, they had earned this respite, this chance to build something new together. "Home," Brennan said as the ship settled onto a plateau overlooking the ocean. Rhea considered the word, a concept that had held little meaning for her during her years as a solitary hunter, moving from contract to contract without attachment to place or people. Now, looking at the human beside her and the untouched world before them, she found herself embracing the notion. "Yes," she agreed, her voice carrying the musical quality that emerged when she was most at ease. Home. As they stepped out onto the soil of their new world, Rhea reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. She had been sent to hunt the deadliest prey, a human who had outsmarted military forces across 4 systems. Instead, she had found a partner who challenged her, respected her, and ultimately had shown her a purpose beyond contracts and credits. The hunter had indeed become the hunted. But in allowing herself to be caught, she had found something she never knew she sought, a shared future with infinite possibilities stretching before them like the unexplored coastline of their new home. Cody took her hand once more as they stood facing the rising sun. "Ready for our next adventure?" Rhea's scales rippled with anticipation and something more, an emotion she was still learning to name. "Always," she replied, and together they stepped forward into the light.